Hi, and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where we talk about marketing, data, and philosophy. This week, PPC. Why is it so expensive, and what can you do? When thinking about this subject, I wanted to consider whether or not the cost of online advertising is in relation to the amount of competition out there. So, the amount of websites that are looking to advertise their services or products. And I had a look back at the historical numbers behind this. And one of the things that it made me think was that sometimes we don't appreciate the fact that online marketing and online advertising is still very, very new. Bear in mind that the first website was created in 1991, and back then there was only one website in the entire world. Well, I have the numbers for the next sort of 30 years. In 2001, there were then 30 million websites. In 2011, there were 346 million. And in 2021, there were 2 billion websites. And although that's a lot of numbers, that basically means there's been a 457% rise in competition during that time. And where it was very normal maybe 10 years ago to have a niche in a particular sector, today there's no such thing. And when I compared the amount of websites to the profit of Google, as I said, there's a 457% rise in competition in the last 10 years, and there's a 473% rise in profits from Google Ads up to 2021. So we can see that those two things are generally in line. The more websites there's been, the more money advertisers have got. But what about the actual costs of those ads? So the first website that actually had any sort of paid advertising that it was offering people was a website called Planet Oasis back in 1997. I was 7 years old, and people were paying in dollars an average of 0.005 pence up to 0.25 pence. So a quarter per click. Absolutely outrageous sums of money back then. But you have to bear in mind how different the internet looked back then and how new the concept of advertising was. And it was a website called goto.com that launched the first ever PPC bidding system that allowed advertisers to bid on keywords. Fast forward into 2009, and Google had been launched and had started its own advertising on there. And in that year, there was a big headline that the keyword mesothelioma sold on Google for an incredible $99.44 a click, making it the most expensive paid click sold at that time. So nearly $100 in 2009. Now, I entered the world of marketing about this time, about 2009. And back then, I would say it was very unusual for people to consider paid advertising. It was still an unknown forum. Google had road camps and sort of educational centers that they rolled out throughout the country in the UK that you could go and attend, and they would show you how to get the most out of ads, what to optimize and what not to. And I actually attended one of those roadshows. That's how I first learned about ads, and I went back 2 or 3 times to get the real dirt from the people working at Google because I wanted to understand this. And I could tell you back then, it was like a gold mine. I could spend £5 and I would be pretty much guaranteed to make £10 for my client. It was a platform that people didn't know how to use. And so if you knew how to leverage these things, if you had a half decent website, you could really make a competitive advantage from using ads during this period. And it was great. And if only, I wish and long for those days to come back. So in 2009, the most expensive click in the world and hit newspaper headlines was about $100 per click. But what about last year? What was the most expensive on average? I would like to point out this is an average. So in 2023, the most expensive keywords on average was offshore accident lawyer, and the cost on average, meaning not the highest, was $815. So that is a more than 8 times more expensive in sort of 15 years time period. The cost has gone up massively. Also, if you're interested in the most expensive general terms or the industries that have to pay the most on average, insurance is number one with $54.91 on average, and then loans, mortgage, attorney, credit, lawyer, and perhaps worryingly for all of my friends in the charity sector, donate was seventh last year. And so, what does this all mean? Well, it means that advertising has become more and more expensive. Obviously, during the pandemic, traditional advertising was not really available for most brands. And so Google and Meta and all these other online advertisers really took advantage of that. I believe that they artificially inflated their costs because they knew that they would be the main source of advertising for most companies and they would be able to get more budget. And so I think that during that period, the costs were artificially inflated. I believe that there are still some niches out there or some keywords that are so specific that they wouldn't have so much competition. But when you look at Google, they're still charging you like more than £1 a click for something that would be unbelievably niche. And you would think, well, surely there can't be many people that are after this. Even Google's own search tools, keyword planner will tell you it's a very low thing and then still tell you that they're going to have to pay more than £2 a click. And so the state of the world today is that businesses that are small and big are having to pay really high costs for their advertising. Often £50 or $50 a click is not unheard of in many industries to get a high quality lead. And while the costs are going up, the actual conversion is not really in line with that. Most people I speak to and most marketers I speak to are really struggling to find out if they got anything for that money, because the problem is that one, Google is always greedy in its attribution. And so even while somebody might click on a Meta ad and a Google will attribute that thing, or they'll get attributed twice. And so you'll have two conversions, but only one customer. The other problem is that sometimes that conversion isn't always linear. Sometimes, obviously, people will click on an ad, they will visit your website, they will go to another device, and then they will buy through there. And so you don't have that linear click. And generally, people are a little bit skeptical because certainly I remember not that long ago, 5 years ago, you could give Google a budget of like £100. Maybe you go very niche in that £100 and you wouldn't actually spend all of your money in that time zone. And that hasn't happened for a long time. And so the challenge today is that the cost is getting higher and higher. And it only really favors those who are willing to spend a lot of money. And it discriminates against smaller brands with smaller budgets and wondering how they can compete. And there's a lot of advice out there about what can you do? How do you optimize? So I wanted to go into what you can do. So the first thing is, from an advertising point of view, I would say that there are less gains. I'm not saying that there's no gains. I'm saying that there's less gains than there used to be in optimizing your ad. But certainly if you've got a well-structured ad with a good landing page and a keyword and nice materials and good graphics and all of that kind of stuff, if you optimize that as much as humanly possible, that will make a difference. But I would say it's probably making less of a difference. The second thing is optimizing the algorithm. So because of privacy laws and because it suits the big advertisers, you are being able to target people less and less specifically. And so they are saying, hey, trust our algorithm. Even though the costs of your adverts are going up, trust our algorithm and we'll find the right people for you, which a lot of people have an issue with. And I would say I'm probably in the category of people who have an issue with that. And so the problem with that is that you don't have a competitive advantage, right? That same algorithm that is optimizing your ads towards your specific niche of people will also work for your competition. And if the cost is going up because there's more competition, then you have no strategic advantage in trusting their algorithm. So what you should do is optimize it using your own data. So first-party data is going to become more and more valuable. And the specific thing that I'm talking about is lifetime value. So you have that data within your own database about how much people are worth, not from their first click, which is what most of your advertising is currently optimized toward, but over their lifetime. So to give you an example, I click on your website today, I will probably buy something quite small if you're new to me. Let's say I spend 20 quid. But over time, if I trust your brand and you deliver on time and the product is what you describe, my lifetime value could be a lot higher than that. And so rather than optimizing towards the first click of how many £20 can I get, you should optimize towards how many £2,000 can I get. And by sending the data that you've got back to Google through reverse ETL, which is programs like High Touch or Sensors, you can then optimize your algorithm towards high value customers for your business, which will lower your overall cost, but it will be worth more to you in the long term. Typically, we see 173 clients save about 20% of their advertising costs by doing this. The second thing you can do if you are omnichannel, or if you're advertising on a couple of different platforms, is that you deduplicate those. So if somebody does click on Meta and Google, you can get that information, you can model it to see which one came first, and then you can say to Google, actually, Oliver came through Meta and not from you, and they can deduplicate the cost of that going forward. But the third thing is that this is not a problem that's going to go away. There's only going to be more websites and more competition, we would think, in general. And so you should also consider, how can you make your offer more appealing? And it might not lower your costs, but it might work in a different way. I think there's a weird psychological thing that goes on with advertising where, although people are conscious of the cost going up, they are still less conscious than giving away an offer or giving away something to get people hooked on there in a weird way, or spending money in a different way, by which I mean, like, if you're going to be spending £20 on a click to get someone onto your website and hope that they find something that they like and hope that they buy, why not spend £10 on a click, but you give them £10 as an offer, because that might draw more people in. But I think that people on some level, they account that differently in their heads, and they think that the £10 is more real if it's something that they're giving away versus the £10 of advertising money. And I'm not sure how that works. But I would think that more often we're going to see people who give away an offer, they have a loss leader on top of smaller advertising budgets in order to get people onto their pipeline for the first time. Temu is like an online shopping, direct from the consumers thing, does a lot of this. They give away a lot of different products to get people to sign up to make that first purchase. And then from then on, they'll get value from that. There is also claims that they're stealing your data, so I'm not going to recommend that you look at Temu or use Temu, because there are some claims that have not been verified yet that they are also allegedly stealing your data, but that's a side issue. The second thing that you can do is not advertise and spend the money in a different way. If you're spending 10 grand on advertising in a year, or 12 grand or something like that, perhaps there are different ways that you can make money and sell your products. It might be that you do physical shows. It could be that you go on the street and give away things. Spend the money more on social media and content and softer ways to get people known for your brand. Spend money advertising in a different way by engaging in influencers or sponsoring different brands. And so if the cost per click is high and you don't have a big budget, think about other ways that you can market to people, because the more traditional ways of marketing in terms of billboard advertising and things are still not quite recovered at this point from the pandemic, and they're suffering a little bit, and there's opportunities there in the short run while they're still looking to keep their revenues up, where perhaps you can get a better deal today. But overall, if you want to lower your PPC costs, the main things are, yes, advertise within whatever systems and advertising channels you do. Send across your first party data to lower those costs and improve who you're targeting to, but also consider the fact that money can be spent elsewhere, and it might have a longer term and better overall effect for your business, and not just give money to those advertisers, because, as I said, the costs are only going to go up, and there's not a lot that you can do about that apart from trusting niche advertisers or finding other ways to promote your business. And so those are my thoughts for the week. How are you lowering your costs? What do you think about the rising cost of PPC? And do you trust the numbers that you see from these advertising platforms? Would love to hear your thoughts down below, and thanks for watching.